All right, bark monitoring versus management. So, a lot of parents are in this new world of having to raise kids in a tech world. Like in a tech, it is a world that is centered around technology, and our kids are going to be a part of it, regardless of how we feel about it or how much we try to hold them back and away from it. They're going to be a part of it. So, a lot of times when people think of monitoring their kids' devices, they are actually thinking of management. And management and monitoring are two very different things. And there are a lot of different softwares out there that can do one or both. And there is one that I think is the best at both, which is Bark. So when we got our kids' phones, I knew immediately that I wanted monitoring. I wasn't sure because this was back in 2019 if that existed, and it did. It was Bark. They were a pretty new company, maybe like 2 years old. Um, and they did monitoring because monitoring is actually going through the content and analyzing it for anything that needs to be brought to my attention as a parent. And I'll go over some of those topics in just a minute. But management is more of like controlling when they can use their phones, how much they can use their phones, what websites they can access, what apps they can access. It's management, right? It's not necessarily watching for content and then alerting you to it. It is you as the parent having control over what they use and what they have access to on their devices. Now, your management options are going to vary depending on the device that you have. And there are a lot of options. There are iPhones and Apple devices, there are Androids. And under the umbrella of Android are things like the Bark phone, which I highly recommend, or Gab, Gizmo, things like that. There are also softwares that you can download and use on your devices that will help you with management, things like Family Link, Life 360, and even Bark. So when it comes to management, I don't really use much on my kids' devices anymore because they're at an age where I don't really need to manage so much about that because we've had years and years of conversations of setting boundaries. And there have been times where I have set screen time limits and things like that. And I have definitely blocked content on their phones, not allowing them to view sexually explicit content, not being able to download certain apps and things like that from the App Store. And if they are, I have monitoring software up so that I can get alerted if they do. But management is different than monitoring. And monitoring, in my opinion, is they can be equally important, but in my opinion, monitoring is the most important. Not all parents will agree that monitoring is important or necessary or useful. But I think when they say this, they are thinking of monitoring in the context of what it used to be like to be a kid. Monitoring in the past used to be things like leave your door open, right? Or being able to listen in on the landline to conversations that are going on. Monitoring was able to happen in these more organic ways. Kids now have devices that are secretive. They have apps that are designed to be secretive, like Snapchat and all of these other ones, secretive and anonymous and hidden. And the Apple iOS 18 update that just came out made it even more easy for kids to hide things and lock things down and hide their activity online. And so monitoring kids in 2024 is not the same as monitoring kids in 1994. It is different. And we need to be able, like, a lot of people will say, well, my parents didn't hear the conversations I had in the lunchroom or at my sleepovers. And the conversations that you had at the lunchroom and at your sleepovers are nowhere near as invasive, intense, or open-ended or accessible as they are on these devices 24/7 at any moment if you don't put monitoring on it. So in my opinion, monitoring is more important than management, but they both have a time and a place. And not all monitoring apps are created equally. I have used Bark for the last 5 years. And while we have had some glitches because it's an Apple issue, it is not a Bark issue, it makes it very difficult to monitor phones because they prioritize privacy and security for their users. And their users are not meant to be children. So we are giving children devices that are meant for adults, and they are protected by laws like COPPA where an adult is defined as 13 years old. So it is no fault of Bark's that it is difficult to monitor an Apple device, but not all softwares are created equally. I highly recommend Bark. You can get the link for it down below to go check it out and sign up for it, whether you want to get your kids a Bark phone specifically, where the software is built right into the phone, which is the best option, I think, for monitoring and safety. You can get the Bark app and install it and use it on Android or Apple devices, or you can get the Bark home system, which is essentially a router that you can control, and you control content, you can do management, you can do monitoring, all of these things. The link is down below if you would like to get that. But some of these monitoring softwares are only monitoring by keyword, right? They're not using context or AI to actually analyze the context of text messages or analyze the context of what they're searching for, or the context of videos and audio files that are being sent and received, or the context of what they are viewing on social media. Caveat being, not all of these social media platforms allow monitoring. So these are things that you need to be aware of so that you can do your management correctly. All of that is down in the description below if you're interested in doing this for your kids. Now, when it comes to monitoring, a lot of parents are concerned about privacy for their children, right? They want to give their kids a sense of privacy, which is wonderful. That is something that should be established in an age-appropriate way. And with a monitoring device or monitoring software like Bark, your kids get to maintain their privacy, and you still get alerted to the things that you need to be alerted to. So you will get an alert saying, hey, here's a conversation your kid had, or here's something that your kid came across on the internet, right? And you can be alerted to that without having to go snoop through all of their conversations and read every text message, which you can't possibly do anyway, because there's too much of that on the phone for you to possibly go through. But they get to maintain their privacy, and you have this software working in the background for you, only alerting you to the things that you need to be alerted to, so that their privacy is still intact, which is amazing. It is a great way for you to keep that trust with them and have these ongoing conversations with them that are going to set them up for success in being a person who has to navigate a tech world and get through their childhood and their teenhood and into adulthood with really clear boundaries and be fully equipped to actually manage that. Kids just aren't equipped with brains to process everything that they have access to on their devices. So monitoring is not a replacement for parenting. Monitoring is not a replacement for conversations that you need to have with your kids. But Bark also does a really good job of giving you ideas of things that you are going to have to address with your kids if they have a smart device. Things like online predators and grooming, right? Just jumping right into the scariest part. Online predators and grooming. How do they find you? What do they sound like? What are they going to say to you? What are the things that they can do? Like, what do they do if that happens to them? Bullying between their peers at school, which is pretty common. It's very easy. The things that kids say online, you probably know this as an adult as well. The things that people say online are far worse than they would ever say face to face. So conversations about bullying and how to have appropriate conversations with people. Sexual content and porn, recognizing false or misleading information on the internet, right? Like there are a lot of topics out here to cover with your kids and have conversations with them so that they are armed and prepared to navigate the online world as children, as teens, and then into adults. Bark is just a really great tool for you to arm your kids with everything that they need. So if you are interested in learning about Bark, trying it out for yourself, check the link below. Highly recommend it. If you have questions, comments, concerns, feedback in the comments, let me know. I would love to hear it. I would love to answer any questions that you have. And like I said, I can't recommend them enough. I think they're a great resource just for how to have these conversations with your kids. They're a great resource for trending topics, things that are changing in the online space because it changes every day, and a great resource for parents to go to when they need to know everything you need to know about raising kids in a tech world. So go check them out. If you're interested in getting the Bark phone, highly recommend it. The Bark software, highly recommend it. The Bark home system, highly recommend it. They just came out with a Bark watch. So if prioritizing your children's safety online and empowering them to navigate the online world with confidence and conviction, definitely check out Bark. It's a great tool for you as a parent.